And Robert says only voters of the town of Sandgate can speak. I knew that wasn't going to go over well.
Power and authority are my middle name. And if I can lord it over 120 people, it's much better than lording it over any member of my family.
I really enjoyed the task and the position, and which I think surprises some people. A lot of people come and say, why are you doing this? I can't imagine doing this.
You can't very well hold a town meeting where you're doing the town's business if it's going to be WrestleMania 10.
It's still important to them, and it's important to the process too, for people to get together and talk to each other.
The first couple of years, I probably knew 95% of the people personally. This past year, if I knew half.
And so he keeps on continuing, being more adamant. What he doesn't know, and the rest of the room knows, is that Harold Beebe was sitting next to me.
Turned to the camera and I said, for those of you who are at home, get out here to the municipal meeting and be a part of democracy in action.
But I just said all that to preface that Hassel is recording a meeting for posterity. What? I'm sure he's going to use it for notes because he wants to be moderator next year anyway.
I just, no, I heard that this is your last meeting. Is that correct, moderator?
Any other questions? My mother's brother moved up here in '52. And so we started coming up in summers to visit. So that's what brought me to Sandgate.
And when did you move to Sandgate?
Permanently in 1972.
As an adult?
As an adult.
Yep. When did you become the moderator for the town of Sandgate?
The first time I stood in for the school board meeting when the present moderator at that time was Lothar Wurselen. And he had something to do in the afternoon, so I did the school board meeting. And that was 1975. And then after that, after Lothar was no longer moderator and I took over, I've been on ever since.
Wow, that's a long tenure.
Yep.
So you kind of stepped in because he was busy that day.
Yep. Well, we talked about it. He asked me if I would do it, and I said sure. So. Did
you know at the time it was going to be so many years later?
No, I didn't. I had no idea. I had no idea.
It makes for a long day, town meeting day sometimes in some towns. Is there anything in particular that you do to prepare for the day? Do you have a sort of a ritual or a tradition that you do to get ready for town meeting?
I dig out my Robert's Rules of Order books and usually go through the procedures quickly. They have a little cheat sheet in the back of each of the books. And I just read over that just to remind myself of the ins and outs and the proper procedures to follow. Not that we follow it by the letter of the law, but it's there, as I explained in the beginning of the meeting, as the guide for our meeting. So if somebody were to act up and speak too long or monopolize the conversation, then I can impose Roberts and ask them quietly to sit down.
So, how would you describe the role of the town moderator?
He's got to be completely non-judgmental on any question. Mm-hmm. And you have to be patient to allow everybody that wants to speak. That's another hard part, especially if it's against your craw, you've got to let the other side speak and be fair about it, and then let the people decide. So ultimately, you're there just to guide the discussion and make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. My big thing is to try to encourage people to speak. A lot of people are afraid to speak or are intimidated because they're in town meeting. And I just sort of try to make it feel more homey so that people are willing to speak their mind.
And that's a big part of what you try to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you recall, because you've been doing this a long time, as we talked about almost my whole life.
No, it's a long time.
So
you're 20 years old already? Wow.
So can you recall a particular year that was especially tough or controversial? or just
We
sort of
had one year, it was a special town meeting that was, it was a little tougher than normal. The select board had tried to put an ordinance in town to ban the use of ATVs on weekends or some such deal. And everybody and their brother from every surrounding town and state was here in this meeting room. They were packed and they were still outside trying to get in. And Robert says only voters of the town of Sandgate can speak. I knew that wasn't going to go over well. And I also knew that if I tried to suspend the rules, that would throw everything up in chaos. So that was a touchy night to get through.
Yeah, and you had to make the decisions to keep it moving. It sounds
I kept
like.
it moving,
Yeah.
and I probably if the Secretary of State were involved, he would have been mad at the meeting because I didn't follow Roberts to the letter. But everybody remained calm. I had to jump on one person who obviously had been consuming alcohol, and I was very firm and quieted him down immediately, and everybody got the message.
Did you allow people from outside of the town to speak, or no?
I explained that they weren't allowed to speak, but they would be in this instance if they obeyed Roberts, and that I was the chair, and if the gavel said you're out of order, you're out the door.
Right.
And after that one person stood up who had been imbibing, and I dealt with him quickly, everybody got the message, and the meeting was fine after that.
Yeah.
And everybody talked from all the different towns, and
Yeah.
the select board eventually reversed their
Their decision. What's the most fun part of the job?
Meeting the new people, and it's the town meeting. Years ago, way back when I first started coming, it was the old-fashioned town meeting where you had lunch served and everybody got together and you visited. And people from all over town, we gave an award to who drove the farthest to get here. And I remember that. And so I try to make it still a community affair. So I go up and visit with people before the meeting, how you doing, da-da-da. And get them at ease, and then they talk, and we visit back. Do you remember when? And those type of
Yeah.
stuff. That's the best part. You get to see old friends and hopefully make some new ones that are willing to participate.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about not being judgmental, and you have to be objective, obviously, and that your role is really to let everyone speak that wants to speak. How do you keep your personal feelings out of it?
It's hard, but I guess over the years I've just practiced it. In other lines of work that I've done, I can't express my feelings necessarily. So it's just been something I've been lucky with, that I've been able to hold it back when I'm against Article 2, but I don't show it.
Practice.
Yeah, a lot of practice.
What advice would you give the next Sandgate Town moderator?
Well, I guess I'd have to say just you develop a thick skin, or don't take anything personally. They both amount to about the same. If you don't let anything bother you, if someone's against the article that you're for, you're just letting them speak their mind, just like a regular conversation like we're having now. I may disagree with something you're going to say, but that's just your opinion, and this is my opinion, and that's all. If you just keep it that way at that level and let the voters decide. And ultimately, I don't always like the decision, but I've learned to live with that.
Right.
So.
That's good advice. Yeah. What's changed over the years?
The format of the meeting has changed. We went from the old town meeting where everything was done by paper ballot, and that was as secret as you got because you didn't want your neighbor to know you were voting against the road commissioner, so you asked for a paper ballot. And now we have an Australian ballot. And a lot of people, I was against the Australian ballot, and I still am, not that I'm against voting, but I find that the Australian ballot, generally speaking, in the big term, makes uninformed voters. They'll see 7 names running for the select board, and nobody knows anything about them or what they plan to do. And they vote for the first one in line or the second one in line or the name that they like. Where under the old town meeting method, you stood up and said, well, I want to lower the taxes, or I want ATVs to run in town.
Right.
And I'd say, well, I don't want ATVs to run in town, I'm going to raise the taxes. Then you have the voters that can make a decision on something you've said and what they know about you. So that's the part that I don't like about the new meeting. It's a little shorter. It usually runs maybe 3 hours. It used to run 4 to 5, but the 4 to 5 was a lot of visiting, because when you got up to do a paper ballot, that was 10 or 15 minutes. And at that time, everybody walked around and talked, or went over and got some Swedish meatballs. So it's a little less community time, I guess.
Right.
But
Right.
it's not really
So you
big.
don't have the food anymore?
No, nobody brings food anymore. That's sad. That was nice, all the home-cooked dishes.
That's a big change.
Yes,
right?
a big.
Is town meeting going to be around in 50 or 100 years?
I hope it exists, and that's sort of another thing I've been working for ever since I started. I had a similar situation when I was 18. I had uncovered some corruption in Stamford, and I went to the town meeting. And I stood up and started talking, and once I touched that hot button, I was told this was a representative town meeting and I didn't have the right to speak. When I came to Sandgate, after I got out of the service, and I could see that I could talk, I said, this is democracy in action. Yeah. Thomas Jefferson said the town meeting is 100% pure democracy, and that's what it is. And that's why I've been a stalwart in trying to keep the old-fashioned town meeting. When we went to the Australian ballot, I was disappointed, and since then we've seen fewer voters at the town meeting. We used to get 103 people, because that was the only day you could vote and speak.
Right.
Now we get 30 people to speak. So people are, and we're getting 200 voters, but what are they voting on?
Maybe we need to bring the food back to get the people here.
We've talked about that. I've talked about that with a lot of voters. And they would say, do you remember when? And I said, yeah, you can still do that.
Yeah.
So maybe I should prepare a dish, not that I'm very good at cooking. It might start the ball rolling
Right.
again.
What
if
would
they
you
don't like
bring?
my Swedish meatballs.
You'd bring Swedish meatballs?
No, I probably make macaroni and cheese. I can make that pretty well. Other than that, I don't know.
How do you think technology has affected our democracy, and how do you, or changed it, or what effect?
I think people generally are afraid of change. Back in the early 70s, when Lothar was still moderator, there was a lady, Irene Vaughn, who was 101 years old, who couldn't make it to meeting. And she had a friend bring a tape recorder. And he told Lothar, I'm going to tape the meeting so that Irene can hear what went on. And during the middle of the meeting, Lothar said, I just want everybody to understand in here that this meeting is being taped. Well, the constable, and we almost had a riot in that meeting because people were so against that technology at the time, just a tape machine.
Yeah.
Now, I've been up to Montpelier, and the next thing they're trying to do, or say is going to happen, is Skype will come to a meeting. Mm-hmm. So that if you are in South Carolina and you're a resident here, you could Skype and listen to the meeting and vote and get your 2 minutes of airtime. So that's going to change, and I don't know how the people are going to deal with it. I've mentioned it to the people so they know it's coming, and I think that's a good thing because we've got voters that are out of, maybe they're in the service and they're overseas and they want to vote on this issue or vote for the selectmen. So I think it's good in that way. Anytime a person can speak and get their message out and hear other people, I think that's an advantage to the old town meeting, and that I want to see continue. If we stop that, then we'll be doing those levers and the long lines.
Right. How do you think people would react if public access came in and said, hey, we want to film your meetings?
I think that at first they might be apprehensive about standing up in front of a camera, whether even if you're in the back of the room. I'm being recorded, just that tape recorder incident. Yeah. It'd be the same thing. But ultimately, I think today people are more technology savvy than they were in the 60s, so that it wouldn't bother them as much if they're being recorded, I would hope. I do know in other surrounding towns, people watch basketball games, watch select board meetings to find out what's going on. One of the biggest arguments everybody has about the small towns is that the 3 selectmen will meet in private and vote to do A, B, C, and nobody knows about it. if it's on cable TV, everybody knows about it. So I think it'd be great for town meeting if we would get cable here. It's just whether, we don't have a population density to make the cable companies want to come here.
This room is a beautiful room. We're in the town hall in Sandgate, and you have some really great photos. We've been around a few towns now, and what do you know about, what are these photos about?
These are all legislative people. Junior Bentley was a member of the legislature in 1952,
Okay.
Charles Bentley.
Okay.
And so while he was up there, he got pictures of all the legislatures from previously and himself at the same time when they used to do these huge pictures in 1914 of the
Group
state
picture,
legislature.
yeah.
So that's where a lot of the history came from. And then people have donated other pictures about old homes in town, old homesteads, the Hurd homestead or whoever.
Yeah.
And it's nice to look back. Oh, I remember that corner. That's where this house is now. And people tell the stories about the ice skating pond down below the hill down here and
Right.
whatnot.
Right.
It's nice.
Well, it's a nice room. Do you know how long has it been in use? This building.
This building was built right after the other one burned down, and it's been in continuous use ever since.
Nice. Well, I think I'm finished up. Is there anything that I missed or that you want to share with the world about your duty as town moderator?
Yeah, I'm about to go to that pasture in the sky, so I think we need to get a new moderator for the town of Sandgate.
Hey, Sandgate residents.
Step up.
Hey, Chris, is it true?
Yes, I was nominated and elected to be the new town moderator in Sandgate for 2018.
How does it feel?